Anthony Richardson is finally back and ready to roll as the Indianapolis Colts take on the Miami Dolphins at Lucas Oil Stadium. Can Richardson pick up where he left off in week 4? And can the Colts contain Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Devon Achane? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, I'm joined here by my co-host of the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, Drake Wally. Drake, the Colts are coming off of a win. It seems highly likely, finally, that they're going to have their starting quarterback return this week. I know we had been saying that for a couple of weeks on this show, and the Colts have pulled a quick one on us on Friday or right before the game, but Anthony Richardson, I can confidently say he will be starting for the Indianapolis Colts, and it comes at a really good time because the next few weeks or so for this Colts team, their schedule gets really, really tough, the toughest part of their schedule, and they're kicking it off against the Miami Dolphins team that we thought was going to be much more competitive, but without Tua Tagovailoa, this team has definitely taken a step back, but they can still beat you on any given Sunday.
Exactly. And you know what? They're more of a grinded out type of team right now. They've got a really gritty defense that is one of the best, actually, believe it or not, in the NFL in multiple categories. And while their offense has really struggled with Tyler Huntley and Skylar Thompson, Mike McDaniel is still an offensive mind that can figure out ways to get Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane, guys like that. Jalen Wright, who's really been the most explosive back this season for the Dolphins, in positions to succeed, especially against a defense like Indianapolis that just got gashed again in the ground game. Okay, so, Tony Pollard looked really good against the Colts. So I think there's a lot of things that the Colts have to shore up. You can't just walk into this game expecting to win. You're going to have to earn it because the Dolphins, they've got their backs against the wall, man.
Exactly. The Dolphins are in a must-win situation.
Yes.
They're still
Yep.
figuring out what to do at the quarterback position. But like you mentioned, that ground game is going to be going. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL currently, especially against the pass. So there's going to be some challenges there for this Indianapolis Colts team this weekend. NFL Nerd is getting us started off. Glad to be back. We're glad that you are back, NFL Nerd. And he also asked, let's talk about pass rush win rate year over year. How are the Colts doing 5 games in last year versus this year? That's a question for Stats Matt. I do not have those stats in front of me. Stats Matt is going to have to look that one up. And speaking of Stats Matt, he's in here. Even though he's running daddy daycare over there, he's still joining us tonight. Good to see you, my friend. Sean Contright, as always, loyal listener. Always good to see you. John Gilbert as well. I'm excited to see AR. We need to get good, fast, loving Womack. Go Colts. We've got Paul Wilson as well. Very, very concerned about our run defense. So we'll definitely talk about that run defense going up against Achane, Raheem Morris. The Dolphins have a plethora of running backs that could give the Colts trouble this weekend. Patrick as well. I seem to remember another team that was number 1 against the pass recently. Yes, and the Colts did just fine there. Lindsey Mack as well. Just watch Rocky 3, and now I'm too pumped to sleep, but don't be offended if I fall asleep during the show. Well, Lindsey, we're just glad that you're able to join us. We know it's late over there, so we appreciate you tuning in live. And everyone else that you guys come on in, we've got Hustle Man Jones as well. Always good to see you. Please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts_SI on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that bell and turn on the notifications so you never miss us. We're at about 2,400 subscribers on the YouTube side of things, so let's keep that climbing. We want to get to 3,000 as quickly as possible. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, Lindsey doesn't have the comment up, but I'm going to say it anyway. Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star review so we can continue to reach other Colts fans just like you. Drake, let's dive right into it. The Colts 3-point favorites this weekend at home against the Dolphins, over under 43.5. The odds makers in Vegas do think that the Colts are going to come out on top, but they don't think it's going to be a blowout. And I don't see this game being a blowout either. Yes, the Dolphins do have some issues at the quarterback position, but I do think they had a bye week. They're able to kind of settle things down a little bit. I think this game is going to be closer than people think. Do I think it's going to be a 3-point game? I'm not so sure about that, but I do think that if the Colts are expecting the Dolphins to just lay over in this game, they've certainly got another thing coming.
Yeah, and it's really that defense for the Dolphins that sticks out to me, even without key playmakers. They've suffered some really bad injuries this season, but man, they're the kind of defense that against a quarterback, if Richardson goes out here, right, and he does not play accurate football, he's throwing the ball all over the place, you could have a repeat of what the Green Bay Packers did to him. I mean, this is a team that will make you pay in the passing game. Now they're more susceptible in the run, but yeah, I definitely like that 3-point differential. I think that the Colts are pretty good to cover it, but I go back to that Green Bay Packers game where we said that at the worst case scenario is, they'll go into the second half and they'll at least figure it out. So this is a trap game for the Colts. It really is. You cannot sleep at all on this Dolphins team, because while they are going to lean a lot on that defense and that run game, man, they still have some playmakers that can make you pay if you miss a tackle. So.
Exactly. It is a trap game because next week the Colts travel to Houston to get a rematch with the Houston Texans, and that's a huge game for this Colts team. You can't look ahead. You have to focus in on this Dolphins team and take care of business at home before you even begin to think about the Texans in week 8. Patrick is saying once we get to 3,000 subscribers, Drake has to beer bong a Moscow Mule on air. I second that. That's definitely happening, Patrick. So thank you for thank you for the idea. Make sure you remind us once we get there as well. But Drake, let's talk about Anthony Richardson. Yeah. Finally returning for the Indianapolis Colts. He doesn't have any restrictions on him, feels good. There's no more pain in that strained oblique, and he's been a full participant in practice each day this week, on track to start against the Dolphins. But again, Richardson hasn't been out there, obviously, for 2 weeks since that second drive of the game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So what exactly are your expectations going to be of Anthony Richardson coming into this game and facing off against a Miami Dolphins defense that currently ranks 3rd in the NFL against the pass, only allowing 159.6 yards per game? So what are you expecting out of Anthony Richardson in his return?
I just think that they're going to pretty much do the same thing they were doing when he was playing in the game against the Steelers. I think that they predicated a lot of the movement on him with his feet, because he had some pretty good runs, and then he was just dicing up the defense with accurate passes. I know that one of those was ridiculous to Michael Pittman in that game, but I think that you can't just say, okay, dude, this is a team that's really good against the pass. They're not as good against the run, so we're going to run the ball to get you a little bit, smoother of a transition into throwing the football against a tough pass defense. I don't think that's the case. I think there's ways you can attack this pass defense, and I think that Richardson needs to get into a rhythm early, because then it's just going to help your offense hit the ground running as fast as possible, because in that game, going back to the Steelers, he was leading his second touchdown drive of the game. So
yeah, I mean, I know Shane Steichen isn't afraid of defenses that have had success against the pass. Certainly the Pittsburgh Steelers, when the Colts played, were one of the best teams against the pass. The Tennessee Titans were ranked number 1 in the NFL against the pass last weekend. A different quarterback, obviously, but Shane Steichen still threw the football plenty last week, dialed up some plays. I would expect to see the same type of game plan that you saw from this Colts team earlier in the season when Anthony Richardson was in. I don't expect them to switch it up much. If anything, they may call a little bit fewer quarterback runs, try to protect Anthony Richardson a little bit, but I still see them wanting to come out and firing. I think that this Colts team wants to probably go up tempo against this Miami Dolphins defense as well, because they're missing some of their key guys. Jalen Phillips isn't out there. Bradley Chubb isn't out there. On the defensive line for the Dolphins, you have it's a bigger defensive line group with Calais Campbell, Benito Jones, Sean Hand, Zach Seiler, who's a very good defensive tackle there. So you don't have your top pass rushers for this team, but you still don't want to allow the Miami Dolphins to get some momentum early. You don't want Anthony Richardson to go out there and feel like he's having to press as well. So I think for Anthony Richardson, it's really tough to determine how he's going to play, because he could very well come out and have some rust because he hasn't played in live football in 2 weeks. Or is he going to pick up right where he left off against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where he was calm in the pocket? The game, you could tell, was starting to slow down for him. He was marrying his lower body to his upper body, and he was able to deliver accurate throws of the football. If he can do that, then I don't think this Colts offense is going to have any problems with the Miami Dolphins defense. However, if he comes in a little bit erratic, if he's rushing things again, that's when you could see some early 3-and-outs, some stalled drives. So it's really just dependent on what type of Anthony Richardson are you going to get. And I think it's going to be interesting to see whether Shane Steichen does let him go out there and just rip it like I think he's going to, or if he's going to ease him back into things, relying on the running game. The only reason I don't think that he's going to do that is because Jonathan Taylor's not going to be out there. So instead, you're going to want to get the ball into Anthony Richardson's hands early, try to shake off that rust as quickly as possible, and try to get him into a rhythm and build his confidence back up as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and he's going to be the centerpiece of the entire offense, especially since Taylor isn't out there. Because when Taylor is out there, I mean, that's really the guy that I think that right now, anyway, in Richardson's development, you need to look for number one. So, yes, I think that there still needs to be an emphasis on running the football, because you can't really operate this offense with Richardson, having him throw 35 plus 40 times a game. I mean, I think you could have a hectic day if that happens. So I think you're going to see that nice balance. But I do think that, like you mentioned, when they first get the ball, if they win the coin toss, don't be surprised if they take the ball, they receive it, they put Richardson out there, they have him start firing off some quick throws just to get him into a rhythm and operate that way.
And the Colts, the past 3 games, have been very successful on their first drives against the Steelers. Obviously, when Richardson was in there, Colts scored a touchdown on the first drive. The same thing against the Jaguars. Same thing, against the Tennessee Titans. This Colts team has been very, very crisp, and they've executed at a very high level when the plays are on script. As soon as they get the ball, these first drives, the Colts have gotten off to a fast start. So you hope that can continue this weekend with Anthony Richardson out there as well. The first stat of the day, presented by Busch Light. Miami averages under 2 sacks and 6.2 pressures a game. Their secondary is what is good, not necessarily their pass rush. So that's good for Anthony Richardson. It doesn't seem like, again, because they're missing Bradley Chubb, they're missing Jalen Phillips. When you look at their top pass rushers, it is like Calais Campbell, Emmanuel Ogbah, Chop Robinson. Those are the guys that are their top pass rushers. And I don't think anybody on the Dolphins, Drake, I don't think anyone has over 1.5 or 2 sacks. So they're not a defensive line that really gets after you. They do have some players in the secondary that Anthony Richardson is going to have to be wary of, but I wouldn't expect a barrage on Anthony Richardson in the pocket. This Colts offensive line still playing at a very, very high level. He's going to have time to make those throws. The big question will be, is he going to take that time? Is he going to slow down, make sure his lower body is still married with his upper body, and deliver accurate throws of the football?
Yeah, I mean, when you're dealing with, I'm looking at it right here, Jalen Ramsey, and then you have a guy that we thought would look good in a Colts uniform when he was a free agent, and Kendall Fuller, Javon Holland. I mean, these are guys that can absolutely play some football, and they can make any quarterback look silly. So I think that's an interesting thing that Stats Matt actually put up there. So thank you so much. Presented by, of course, Busch Light, as Andrew always mentions. That might be a way to attack this Dolphins defense, is right up front. You've got a top tier offensive line, and even though you don't have your right guard, you have a good replacement right now in Dalton Tucker. I think that might be a target right there for Indianapolis.
Exactly. Now, another area, the area that you would expect the Colts to attack this Dolphins defense is on the ground. The Dolphins are only 18th in the NFL against the run, averaging 125.8 yards allowed per game. but no Jonathan Taylor again this week. He hasn't practiced all week. So I think next week against the Houston Texans is a more realistic chance that Jonathan Taylor does play. So again, you're looking at Trey Sermon. You're looking at Tyler Goodson. You're looking at Evan Hull again as being your three backs, but mainly it's going to be Sermon and Goodson. Sermon is dealing with a knee injury. He did return to practice today, but Drake, we mentioned this on Monday when we were talking about the running game. In my opinion, it's got to be Tyler Goodson that handles the bulk of the carry, especially with Trey Sermon kind of a little, he's dinged up right now. Tyler Goodson isn't. Tyler Goodson is fresh. He's healthy. And we have seen both against the Jaguars and the Titans that when the ball gets into Tyler Goodson's hands, he's just a much more explosive runner of the football. So in my opinion, the Colts need to lean more on Tyler Goodson in the running game than do necessarily Trey Sermon. But what do you think? What do you think of the Colts rushing strategy is going to be this weekend against the Dolphins?
Real quick before I answer that, let's throw out some numbers. Check these numbers out. So Tyler Goodson, 13 carries, 77 rushing yards, 5.9 yards per carry. Then you've got Trey Sermon, 37 carries, 91 rushing yards, 2.5 yards per carry.
Oof.
Okay, so look, man, Trey Sermon is not very explosive at all. Okay, when there's a gap, he doesn't hit it hard. Okay, if it's one-on-one, that defender is going to make contact with him. He's not going to make him miss. He's a bigger power back, but he just is not creating much yardage with the football. Tyler Goodson is in more limited capacities, of course, but can also catch the ball. Okay, and is probably your best receiving back. We haven't really seen much of Hall yet, but right now he is your best receiving back. So I agree. I think that you need to at least give Tyler Goodson and Trey Sermon maybe like a 60-40, 50-50 share. I'm not kidding. Like, I think that Tyler Goodson has shown he needs to be more involved until Taylor is healthy, because right now he is just he's going to give you more chances to pop a big play than Trey Sermon will, especially with Richardson.
And I think they should, again, going back to Sermon's health. He's obviously not right. I think it was a shoulder last week. It's a knee this week. Trey Sermon is battling some lingering injuries that are certainly not helping things. So put the onus on Tyler Goodson. I think he's earned it with his performances the past 2 weeks. Let him go out there and carry the load this week. I think he's more than capable of doing that. I also think that having Anthony Richardson back is going to help this Colts team on the ground. The threat of the quarterback run game is going to make those linebackers freeze for just a half second. And that's where Tyler Goodson, because of his explosiveness, can take advantage and continue to move the chains. And Anthony Richardson, I would expect to have some quarterback design runs as well. Because if he's out there, that means he's 100%, and that means that the full playbook is open. So do I expect Richardson to run 9 times on Sunday? No, but certainly it wouldn't surprise me if he had 6 or 7 carries on Sunday either. So in my opinion, the Colts should go with Tyler Goodson. Have him be your primary back. I'm not saying you take all the carries, but he should get the majority of the carries on Sunday and see what he can do against this Miami Dolphins defense. But Drake, the bigger matchup that I think a lot of people are going to be watching is you mentioned the secondary for the Miami Dolphins. They're probably their best unit on the defensive side of the football. And this Colts wide receiver core has certainly stepped up, but they're banged up. Michael Pittman Jr. still dealing with the back injury. Josh Downs dealing with his toe injury, and then Alec Pierce showed up on the injury report today for the first time with a shoulder injury. Did not practice today. So all 3 of the Colts' top wideouts are dealing with some sort of injury right now. So when you look at them going up against Jalen Ramsey, Kendall Fuller, Javon Holland, which one of these guys do you think is going to step up this weekend or be that primary target for Anthony Richardson? Because one of these guys is going to have to carry the load and make some hay against a very good Dolphins secondary.
Yeah, it'll be Josh Downs. I really do think that Josh Downs is just – I think he's officially established himself as a go-to safety blanket type of guy. Can gobble up between 6 to 8 to 9 catches, something like that. Just commands a lot of attention. He's going to command so much respect in the short game from that defense and those cornerbacks and linebackers, because he just is such an elite route runner. Okay, I think that he's going to be able to get open. Richardson's going to be able to find him, and you're going to need him to do that so you can open up other opportunities. Because I think that the best way to defeat a guy like Jalen Ramsey is with a guy like Alec Pierce. Actually, I think a guy like him, make him go get physical with a guy downfield. I think that's the best way to attack Jalen Ramsey. Maybe in the short game too, but Ramsey's the kind of guy that if you throw the ball just a hair too slow on a comeback route, dear God, he'll take it for 6. So, I mean, you got to be really careful. I think Josh Downs is going to be an integral piece to the Colts having offensive success.
I think you're correct there. Stats Matt is throwing a bunch of stats in the chat, so we got to make sure we can't miss these. Going back to the run defense of the Miami Dolphins, Miami gives up 4.7 yards per run, 9th worst in the NFL. Again, there's going to be opportunities to eat for this Colts rushing offense. Tyler Goodson and Trey Sermon, they've got to step up, and Anthony Richardson as well on the ground. Another stat from Stats Matt: the Dolphins do not turn teams over, but they only give up an average of 5.2 yards per play, which is tied for 9th best in the NFL. So, Drake, what that tells me is this team doesn't give up a lot of explosive plays. They're a defense that wants you to take your time, be patient, and make your way down the field. I think that's something that Anthony Richardson has struggled with in the past. He's looked for the bigger plays, and that's where he's had his most successes, on those deep shots. But on the short passes, leading those long drives, that's where Richardson has struggled. So I think that's that. And if for this Colts offense to be successful, you're going to need to see more of that out of Richardson in this offense, of taking what the defense gives you and not only taking it, but converting on that as well, taking those 2 to 3 yard completions and turning them into 6-7 yards of gain. So I think that's going to be crucial for the Colts this weekend.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, that's exactly what he's shown to struggle with the most, is those simple throws, quick throws, those throws where you have to put touch on it over the top of a defender. So this defense is going to challenge him in every way, shape, and form in the passing game. I know that they don't. I believe it's Jalen Phillips. I know that they don't have him. They don't have Bradley Chubb. But man, you still cannot discount, like Stats Matt said, that secondary. Those corners and safeties will make you pay if you mess up.
Yeah, absolutely. But getting back to the wide receiver talk for the Colts, Drake, I agree. I think it's going to be Josh Downs over the middle of the field. I think that I really think that that's going to be the best matchup for the Colts this weekend. I think because you have Jalen Ramsey and Kendall Fuller as really the outside cornerbacks, Josh Downs is going to do a lot of the best work for this Colts offense in the slot. You could also see, honestly, you look at Kendall Fuller and you look at Jalen Ramsey, neither one of those guys I should say both of those guys struggle at times defending the deep ball. So if you get a one-on-one matchup out there with Alec Pierce, even if it is Jalen Ramsey is still a very good corner. But over these last couple of seasons, you've seen Jalen Ramsey get beat deep more often than what he used to. So I think there's an opportunity there for another big play to Alec Pierce. And I think that as long as Pierce is out there and he's, his shoulder isn't falling off, I think if he's out there and he's able to play, I think that Anthony Richardson is going to look Alec Pierce's way more often. Alec Pierce definitely received more targets with Anthony Richardson out there as opposed to Joe Flacco. Both of them were targeting Alec Pierce, but it seemed like Joe Flacco forgot about Alec Pierce until the fourth quarter, whereas Anthony Richardson would pepper Alec Pierce with throws throughout the game. So if there's a one-on-one matchup there, the way Alec Pierce has played this year, don't be surprised if there's a couple of deep shots to Alec Pierce. I'm not saying that Pierce is going to carry the offense from the wide receiver position this weekend. I do think that's going to be Downs, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see another big touchdown from Anthony Richardson to Alec Pierce on Sunday.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that about Flacco. Yeah, you go from getting consistent targets and everything like that to, you know what? It's the fourth quarter. All right, number 14. Now it's time to throw you the football. That it's like he waits until the fourth quarter. But even if Alec Pierce doesn't catch the football against the Titans, I mean, he drew a crucial PI call. I mean, he's just. You've said this a bunch about Michael Pittman. When you throw him the football, good things tend to happen. Well, this season, when you target Alec Pearson, especially when you throw the football to him deep, good things tend to happen. So don't be surprised if they challenge even Jalen Ramsey with number 14.
And I do expect Michael Pittman to have a role on Sunday,
Sure,
but
of
it's
course.
just so hard to predict what that role is going to be because of the back injury. Michael Pittman was a full participant in practice today, but again, the back injury is nothing to scoff at. Michael Pittman may not be making a big deal about it, but that's because Michael Pittman is one of the toughest guys, if not the toughest guy on the team, Drake. So when you look at Michael Pittman and what he's able to do I expect a high volume game out of Michael Pittman? I mean, I could see that. You could always see that out of Pittman. But at the same time, more realistically, because he is still dealing with that back issue, you're probably looking at more so what he has been doing, 4 to 5 catches for maybe 40 to 50 yards. But when I do see Michael Pittman coming up is when the Colts absolutely need him. I think Josh Downs is going to carry this offense, but still the go-to guy when it's third down and you absolutely need that first down, it's Michael Pittman. So that's when I think that you'll see the most targets from Anthony Richardson to MPJ is in those clutch type of situations where it's a must have for this Colts offense. But yeah, I think you're going to see plenty of Josh Downs once again on Sunday.
Yeah, and you know what? Speaking of the passing game, real quick, I have to say this. It would be nice to also see more of the tight end production. Like we saw from Mo Alley-Cox, it was only 4 catches for 41 yards, but man, it was on 4 targets. It was the most production I've seen in the receiving game from a tight end. If they could get even just 2 or 3 catches out of a tight end for a couple of first downs or something like that, just to help a guy like Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, that would be instrumental because we know that Anthony Richardson does love to target tight ends.
All right, let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball for the Indianapolis Colts. Drake, not facing Tua Tagovailoa this weekend. It's going to be either Skylar Thompson, who is currently listed as the starter on the depth chart of the Dolphins, or who I think it's going to be Tyler Huntley. I think Tyler Huntley is probably going to be the guy out there for this Dolphins team. And so far, the Dolphins offense have not been able to get it going. Especially through the air. 26th in the NFL in the passing game, only 185.6 yards per game. So when you look at this Dolphins team, especially up front, especially at the quarterback position, it's not good, Drake. It really hasn't been good. And I think that because of how the Colts defensive line has performed the past 2 weeks against the Jaguars, against the Titans, 0 sacks in both those games, minimal pressures in those games. It was certainly better against the Titans than it was against the Jaguars, but here's an opportunity to get right if you are the Colts defensive line. The offensive line for the Miami Dolphins is not very good. Yes, you have Teron Armstead out there, but Austin Jackson, Liam Eichenberg, Robert Jones, Aaron Brewer, all of those guys are susceptible to get beat out there. So do you think this is an opportunity for this Colts defensive line to get right, and you're going to see a much better performance out of this group here against the Dolphins?
I just think that they're going to need to stop the run. I think that that's the biggest key to being able to get to one of these 2 quarterbacks. I also think Tyler Huntley is going to be the guy because Skylar Thompson is just he's just almost not even a playable quarterback. So whoever starts, it's going to be predicated on stopping that ground game because you do have Mostert, you do have Jalen Wright, you do have Achane. You've got a 3-pronged attack back there you can just lean on. Okay. I mean, against the Packers, it was pretty much just Josh Jacobs. Now you've got 3 different running backs who can tear you apart if you just allow that to happen, which I think that they're going to do that. They're also going to try to make life really easy for Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill to get the ball quick in their hands, I think. I think that they're just going to try to figure out ways to get the ball, probably even maybe reversed end arounds, something. So I think that there is a key opportunity, though, if they can limit that ground game, Andrew. I really think that there's an opportunity to get 4 or 5 sacks because you just have to say that these aren't very good quarterbacks. I mean, they're just not very good quarterbacks. And if they do decide to go with Skylar Thompson, there might even be more of an opportunity there if they can stop a ground game.
Listen, Tyler Snoop Huntley is a former Pro Bowler. You watch your mouth there, Drake.
Excuse me?
Well,
That's
former
right.
Pro
I
Bowl
forgot.
quarterback Tyler Huntley, but I do think that they do have a propensity to hold the football for a considerable amount of time. But I think the
Sure.
biggest and Stats Matt steals my point here in the chat. The biggest thing that I think this Colts defensive line needs to do, it's on the middle there. Without DeForest Buckner, you need to get some pass rush up the middle. Stats Matt says the Colts interior defensive line has to hold their own. The sacks would be there if the quarterbacks weren't allowed to escape up the middle. And he's 100% correct, because when you turn on the film last week against the Tennessee Titans, Latu and Kwity Paye were winning their matchups. And there was the perfect play that I saw is both Latu and Paye beat the Titans offensive tackles, and they were basically racing to the quarterback. But then you see Raekwon Davis is stonewalled, and you see Taven Bryan getting driven out of the play, and Will Levis is able to just step right up into the pocket and escape, because the Colts defensive tackles in the middle there are not holding their ground. They're not able to keep opposing quarterbacks in the well, getting that pressure right up the middle. That has to change if this Colts defensive line wants to have success. And it just shows you how much DeForest Buckner means to this group. Buckner's not going to be out there this week. We'll see if he's back next week against the Houston Texans. But it's got to be better for the interior of this Colts defensive line in order to pressure those guys. And then not only to pressure the quarterback, but like you mentioned, the running game, because I feel like this Dolphins team, they're really going to focus on the run game. The Colts rush defense has been abysmal. You have Devon Achane, you have Raheem Morris, you have very talented backs in your stable. Go out there and try to punch the Colts in the mouth, right up the gut. And if they can do that, then I think it's going to be a long day for this Colts defense. So we've got a super chat from Paul Wilson. Thank you so much for all of your support, buddy. Really, really do appreciate it. And Paul says the Dolphins lost to the Titans. That is all. So yes, they did lose to the Titans, and I think that's why the Colts are favored this weekend. But I know the Colts aren't taking this team very lightly, because if they do, then it's going to be an embarrassing loss at home. But Paul, thank you so much for all of your support. We have another Stats Matt stat of the day presented by Busch Light. The Dolphins rushing offense has a negative 110 rushing yards over expected, which is the second worst in the NFL, while being the second highest last season. So the rushing offense for this Dolphins team hasn't been great either. They're 18th in the NFL in rushing, but at the same time, there's been a lot of yards out there that they're just not picking up, Drake. That needs to play into the Colts' hands. The Colts have to continue that, because if you let these guys run wild, the Dolphins are going to carry the time of possession like we've seen. Colts offense isn't going to be able to get out there as often as they would like. This defense is going to be tired. The Colts, if they're going to focus in on anything, if Gus Bradley's game plan has anything involved in it, it's got to be to focus in on stopping the run. Make Tyler Huntley or Skylar Thompson, whoever's out there for the Dolphins, make that quarterback beat you. Don't allow them to lean and have the crutch of the Dolphins run game all day long, because you're missing out on an opportunity to force these quarterbacks into mistakes.
Yeah, and look, back to what you mentioned about Raekwon Davis and Taven Bryan, those are two guys that they absolutely have to step up. I mean, Grover Stewart is always going to be a rock in the run game, but he's not really much of a pass rusher, but neither is Raekwon Davis, okay? So, like, it shouldn't always be this thing where you're saying, oh, no, if DeForest Buckner's out, God help the defense. Oh, no, DeForest Buckner is out. God help the defense. They've got to step up right here. This is probably it's a bigger challenge than I think people realize. These three running backs, it's one of the most interesting running back rooms in the NFL. Probably one of the most explosive and talented. Okay, like, you cannot sleep on these guys. If it becomes an issue in that A gap, God forbid if they start missing tackles or something, you don't even need to really worry about passing the football. I mean, so I think that this is that interior is going to be huge right there with Grover Stewart. I'm looking at Raekwon Davis, and if Taven Bryan does have a rough game, man, I would love to see number 54 Dio Dangbo on the interior a little bit more. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think that would be good to see, but I don't have much faith that that's going to happen. Dio Dangbo has been spending most of his time out there at defensive end with Tyquan Lewis down. I think that he is probably the Colts see him needed more on the outside than
fair.
on the inside. But at the same time, really the whole entire Colts defensive line has to step up. Latu and Kwity Paye said are doing their thing with the pressures. The sack numbers just aren't there. If the other Colts defensive linemen, especially in the middle, can hold their own and not allow the quarterbacks to escape, then I think you see Latu and Paye start getting home to the quarterback more often. But Drake, again, yes, Tua Tagovailoa is not out there for the Dolphins this weekend. But Tyreek Hill still is. Jalen Waddle still is. They still have one of the best wide receiver tandems in the entire league. And you can't take that lightly just because Tagovailoa is not out there and it's going to be Huntley or Thompson. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle can still completely wreck a game for you. These Colts defensive backs have to be up to the challenge. So do you think that the Colts defensive backs are going to have the advantage because of the quarterback situation? Or do you see one of these guys or both of these guys in Hill and Waddle having a big game on Sunday against the likes of Samuel Womack, who's been a revelation, Jalen Jones, who's coming into his own? We all know what Kenny Moore II can do. So the Colts secondary hasn't been as bad as we originally thought, but still, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are two of the fastest guys, if not the fastest guys that the Colts have seen all season.
Yeah, and you can play them inside, outside. You can move them all over. And the thing is, I think that Jalen Jones has shown a little bit more of a weakness against those quicker guys. I think that Womack has not faced a guy quite like Tyreek Hill yet. But yes, Andrew, the quarterback situation favors the Colts. It favors every team right now. Like, I mean, the Dolphins are averaging 12 points a game. Okay, they're not playing good offensive football. So until that happens and you see a more of a crisp game from whoever starts, because I don't even think either one of those guys that you just mentioned, Thompson or Huntley, even thrown a touchdown this season. So, I mean, like, these guys have not been good. So this is a key opportunity to limit both Hill and Waddle, because they're going to get theirs. They're going to get short catches. I think they're probably even going to potentially be targeted deep. Who knows? But they're going to get some receptions. They're absolutely going to get the football. So the key is kind of what Gus Bradley's defense is predicated on, right? Limit the explosive plays, get the tackle up front, because we saw when you allow explosive plays, back to the Jaguars game, they had like 3 plays of 60-plus yards. You're bound to lose the game. So as long as they limit the explosive plays from those two, they've got a good chance to win this football game, man.
Yeah. 23 catches for 286 yards and a touchdown from Hill, 21 catches for 258 yards, no touchdowns for Waddle on the season. And you nailed it right on the head there, Drake. It's the explosive plays. This Colts team cannot let Hill or Waddle get behind them. That's when they're at their most dangerous, because I don't care who you have at quarterback. If you're in the NFL, most of the time, if you've got a wide open receiver streaking down the field, you're likely to hit them for a big gain. So I would. This is one of the times where you would probably expect a lot of off coverage by the Colts, by Gus Bradley, to protect against those big plays, to protect against Hill and Waddle getting behind them. And I did like what you said earlier, because I hadn't even thought about this until you brought it up, about using Hill and Waddle potentially in the run game. On those end arounds, on those jet sweeps. That's a way that this Dolphins defense or Dolphins offense could really provide a spark. And if they catch the Colts defense off guard, Mike McDaniel always has something up his sleeve. That guy is always looking to pull one on the defense. He's a very smart play caller. And he finds ways to put Hill and Waddle in the best position possible. So it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest to see those guys involved in the run game, to get some misdirection going, even just to have the threat of them going across the formation. Someone has to be responsible for them, and that takes at least one Colt out of the play. So the Colts have to be prepared for that. They have to have a spy. They have to have eyes on at least Tyreek Hill all day long. But Jalen Waddle is definitely a threat as well. This Colts defense cannot rest on their laurels after having a really good game against the Titans and Will Levis last week. This Colts defensive back group, they're facing completely different animals in the speed category in Hill and Waddle, and if they're not careful, and if they don't take that into consideration, they could get burned.
Yeah, and look, something else that needs to be mentioned. I'm not entirely sure about Skylar Thompson. I would venture to say he's not as athletic, but if they do put Snoop Huntley out there, I mean, you're talking about a guy who can also run the football. So it's like these are two of the most deadly wide receivers. They're going to figure out a way to get them the football. And like you mentioned, if it's end arounds, if it's, those touch passes where it's just a bump pass, does not matter. They're going to figure it out. If for some reason the quarterback can't get the football to them throwing it, they will figure it out, even if it's just a bubble screen every play.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's going to be, I'm very interested to see how Mike McDaniel tries to attack this Colts defense. X Factor time. This, Drake, when I was thinking about this earlier today, this one was very hard for me. Usually there's like a guy that really stands out where this guy is going to help determine, but this game against the Dolphins, I think it's just because you're not exactly sure how the Dolphins are going to, number one, attack Anthony Richardson, but how they're going to attack this Colts defense either. So I think you could have a surprise X factor on Sunday, which is who my pick is going to be. But I'm going to give the floor to you. Who is your X factor in this game against the Miami Dolphins?
Man, it's going to be more of an area of the defense, but it's the defensive interior. All right. So it's going to be Davis. It's going to be Stewart, Bryan. Those guys have got to provide a wall in the run game, and they need to get something in the passing game, because I was going to say my X factor should be Leatu Latu, but it's going to be his success is completely, I think, reliant upon the defensive interior, because as you saw, and our own Zach Hicks just put out a piece on this, he was right there getting sacks. It's just that all Levis had to do was go whoop, step right up in the pocket, and that makes the defensive pass rush almost run into each other. So I'm going with the interior, man. They got to have a good game.
I think that's a good area to look at for this Colts defense. Lindsay saying the X factor on offense after Matt's first stats of the day presented by Busch Light is Tyler Goodson. And then on defense, with the speed of Tyreek Hill and Waddle, I think they might target Jalen Jones, so he will need to be on fire. It's a good point. Jalen Jones has struggled at times with speedier wide receivers, so I think Jalen Jones could be a good X factor. Sean Contright says it's Anthony Richardson, and Stats Matt says Anthony Richardson as well. If he can limit the mistakes and hit the layups, it should be an easy win. Patrick says that the X factor is going to be the linebacker unit. I think they need to step up more than the defensive tackles. And honestly, Patrick, that's where I'm going with this. My X factor is Zaire Franklin. Zaire Franklin hasn't had the season that he was expecting to have, nor that we expected out of Zaire Franklin. I think that that this is the game, though. I really do. I think this could be a game where you see Zaire Franklin go out there, get 15 tackles, potentially a forced fumble to really turn this game on its head. But the Colts have to stop the Dolphins' running game, because that is where they are going to put most of their eggs in against this defense. And to do that, Zaire Franklin has to be on his game. He has to be popping these guys in the middle. He can't let the speedy guys of Achane, of Morris, get out and get these huge chunk runs. The Colts really have to set the tone up front. And who's the best one to do that? Zaire Franklin. So again, it was hard for me to pick an X factor. That's why when I was really diving into this guy that you probably aren't expecting against the Dolphins to be an X factor, I'm going with Zaire Franklin right in the middle of the defense.
Well, and you know what? Look, listen to our X factors. I talked about the interior. You talked about Zaire Franklin and the defense. And last week the missed tackles were shored up. So you have to be efficient again because these are again Jalen Wright, Mosert, Ashan. Those are guys that if you miss tackles, they have the speed and the elusiveness to absolutely take it to the house. Same thing with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. You've got weapons here. It's just the starting quarterback isn't the one that's distributing the football. So we'll have to see how this defense plays, man.
Yeah, we got some more X factors in the chat. Hustleman Jones says it's going to be JC Carlies. I like that. Carlies has been fantastic this year. He's been going under the radar, but quietly having a fantastic rookie campaign for the Colts. Richie says it's going to be Josh Downs. And then the offensive X factor, Hustleman Jones says it's going to be Josh Downs easily. Stats Matt saying that number 44 needs to play good on Dallas Clark Day. Yes, Dallas Clark is going into the Ring of Honor for the Colts on Sunday. I need to have 44 out there making some plays. Deep is saying X Factors Philip Wheeler. You're about 15 years behind there, my brother, but I love it. NFL Nerd says new rule: the trenches can't pod unless they pair up for 20 plus tackles. I would agree there because they're getting a lot of crap for not playing well and still potting during the week. But Drake, it's time to give our predictions. Colts, Dolphins on Sunday. Colts are 3-point favorites at Lucas Oil Stadium. And they have a chance for the first time all season to get above that 500 mark. So what do you think? Are the Colts going to win their second in a row and go over 500? Or are we going to see the trap game take place and the Colts lose one on Sunday?
I think that they've got this. I think that they're going to win with a bunch of field goals, though. I think it's going to be 26-13. I think Matt Gay is going to have four field goals in this one because the Colts are going to have multiple opportunities. I think they might even have a turnover to just punts. They're going to stop that Miami offense that's without Tua Tagovailoa. But I think that there's going to be those times where they get in the red zone and Miami stuffs them, and Shane Steichen's going to take the points, realizing that he is playing such a weak offense right now.
Okay, so you're going Colts. Let's take a look at the chat here. Hustleman Jones says the Colts are going to win easily, 31-10. He's got confidence in the group there in Indy. Sean Contright, 27-20 Colts. Stats Matt, 23-16 Indianapolis. So we're all on the Colts. We got Lindsey Mack saying Colts 35, Dolphins 28. So a high scoring affair. The only one so far to hit the over. Paul Wilson, 24-17 Colts. And Paul, that's what I'm going with. I think the Colts win this one. 24-17. I do think that the Dolphins are going to have some success at times. They may even give up a big play, but ultimately, I think that this Colts defense can really stifle whoever is playing quarterback for the Dolphins. And I think that Anthony Richardson, while he may start out a little bit rusty, I do think things will settle down for him once the game gets going. And I think you will see this Colts offense have success against a Dolphins defense that, again, doesn't present much of a pass rush. And I think that they have some opportunities. While the secondary is good for the Dolphins, there's going to be opportunities for some explosive plays, and there may be another bomb from Anthony Richardson to Alec Pierce. So I'm going 24-17 Colts, and I think they head into the matchup with the Houston Texans at 4-3. Patrick also saying 23-16 Colts. So we're all on the Colts this weekend. Hopefully that's not a bad omen, but I think this is a game that on paper the Colts should definitely win. And we'll just have to see if we see them play to what they're capable of or play down to their competition where they're in danger of losing a game that they should ultimately win.
Yeah, and again, you just cannot take this team lightly because they do have their backs against the wall. They can't really afford to go to 2-4, and they did just win their last game. But man, I believe that was against the Patriots and Drake May, who's as a rookie, youngest officially now. Richardson takes back seat, but is the youngest starting quarterback in the NFL behind a putrid offensive line. So while the Dolphins got that win against them and they got that win against the Titans, or excuse me, they did lose against the Titans. You can't exactly look at those games too much on the surface because the Colts barely beat the Titans. Okay. And the Patriots are just an awful football team right now. So I think that I think there's a lot of opportunities here, but just do not sleep on this team. You can't lose at home, man.
Yeah, the Dolphins got the victory against the Patriots, and it was Jacoby Brissett out there
Oh, that's right.
playing at quarterback. So definitely an upgrade at quarterback this weekend that this Dolphins defense is going to have to face. Drake, let's take a look at the Colts injury report here, and it's a big one, but big on the surface. But when you look at it, a lot of guys are starting to return from practice. So we'll start at the top and work our way down. Josh Downs didn't practice on Wednesday because of that toe injury, but he did make his way back on Thursday. The same with Ryan Kelly, who's dealing with a calf injury. Hoping both of those guys are out there on Sunday. Chris Lamont's dealing with an ankle again, the backup nickel to Kenny Moore. Not looking likely that he plays on Sunday, but it's not as crucial that he plays with Kenny Moore back and healthy. Dio Dangbo also limited with a hamstring, but he's on the come up. And then Michael Pittman Jr. Didn't practice Wednesday, full participant on Thursday. Things looking up for Michael Pittman as well, dealing with that back injury. So that's about halfway, Drake. What sticks out to you for the top half of the Colts injury report there?
Well, it's really good news. I mean, outside of Chris Lamont's, you got limited participants, full practices as opposed to DNPs. Man, the one that really sticks out to me though is Alec Pierce. So all of a sudden he shows up on that injury report with a did not practice, but honestly, everything else looks good. I know it's lengthy because a lot of these guys didn't practice, but I think it's just because they figured that they could take a day off and that they would be fine starting on Thursday going forward.
The Colts, especially later in the season, the Colts typically use Wednesday. That if anyone is dealing with something, even something minor, they give them the day off of practice. That's how Steichen handled it last year, handled it this year so far. So a lot of DNPs, but if they're coming back to limited or even full on Thursday, it's a good sign for their availability on Sunday. NFL Nerd with the super chat. Thank you so much, brother, for all of your support. And NFL Nerd says, y'all remember Andrew calming fans after the Snead to Titans trade? Yes, I told you guys that L'Jarius Sneed, the numbers looked the hype was a little bit more than what actually showed on the field and the numbers. And so far, the Titans fans that said I was coping, they're the ones that are coping now. That's all I will say. But NFL Nerd, thank you so much, buddy, for all of your support. Really, really do appreciate it. But okay, let's look at the rest of the injury report here. Drake talked about Trey Sermon dealing with that knee injury, but was limited on Thursday. So again, he's working his way back. I would assume that Trey Sermon plays on Sunday, but again, even if he's a little bit dinged up, give it to Tyler Goodson. Allow Tyler Goodson to go out there and make plays because he is healthy right now and he certainly looks more explosive.
Yeah, and I'm all for it because I know that Trey Sermon has a role on this team. I think that Shane Steichen really likes Trey Sermon, and I think he liked him in Philly too. But man, he is just so limited as a runner, and he really isn't going to provide a massive play unless there is just a wide open lane and there's not many tacklers around. So I really like what you said there. Even if he's ready to go by game day, I think that you need to at least give Tyler Goodson even more carries than what he had last week. If not taking over the carries, give him more so that him and Sermon have more of a balance.
Yeah, exactly. Braden Smith full with that knee injury. EJ Speed working his way back with a little bit of a knee issue. He was limited. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor hasn't practiced all week. I don't expect Jonathan Taylor to suit up on Sunday. Next week against the Houston Texans is probably more realistic for Jonathan Taylor. Anthony Richardson has been full all week. He's going to be good to go. And then Alec Pierce missed today with a shoulder injury. And Drake, honestly, if there's anybody on this injury report that that I'm most concerned about, it's Alec Pierce with that shoulder injury to show up for being a full participant Wednesday to a DNP today with that shoulder. Tomorrow's going to be very telling to see how Alec Pierce and that shoulder are doing.
Yeah, and we just talked about one of the biggest ways that we think this Colts offense might be able to attack those cornerbacks is with deep passing, and you're going to need Alec Pierce for that. So you just hope that he can get back to square one, be healthy for that game because I think that they're going to need him to be able to move the ball more effectively.
Yes, so you may still see some of the veterans get a day off tomorrow. Braden Smith usually doesn't practice on Fridays. Wouldn't surprise me if Ryan Kelly is off on Fridays. Shane Steichen after practice will tell us the who is all ruled out. My guess would be the only one that is ruled out is going to be Jonathan Taylor. There might be a lot of questionables up and down the injury report, such as Josh Downs, Michael Pittman Jr. You know, EJ Speed, Ryan Kelly, but I would expect at least Downs, Pittman, Speed, Smith, all of those guys to play. Kelly is more up in the air, but hopefully for the Colts' sake, the only guy that misses on Sunday would be Jonathan Taylor. Drake, let's wrap up with the latest Colts news and rumors before we let the good people get out of here. Got to shout out Rigoberto Sanchez. A guy that doesn't get enough love, doesn't get enough recognition around the league because he's not booting 60-yard punts. But that punt to seal the game against the Tennessee Titans last weekend, we did it on Monday. Absolute chef's kiss, was fantastic. But he was Rigoberto Sanchez was named the AFC Special Teams Player of the Week for Week 6. He averaged 54.2 yards per punt and had 3 punts inside the 20. So Sanchez, you're not going to see him kicking at the length of the field. He's got a better leg than people think, but man, he is an absolute artist kicking the football, and there's a reason why he has been here for so long. Since Pat McAfee retired, the Colts have a really good punter in Rigoberto Sanchez.
Yeah, I was about to say he's actually having one of his best seasons, and you talk about a hell of a comeback story and everything he's been through to be able to come out there and I even put this in the piece I wrote about his AFC Special Teams Player of the Week award is to come out there as a punter. I know it's not a sexy position, but in the fourth quarter when the game's on the line in clutch time and drop a punt like that in the coffin corner. I mean, I saw it all over X. It was one of the most beautiful punts you'll ever see. Good on him, man. He earned it. Definitely.
Yes, he did. The Colts also made some more moves on the practice squad. They did sign running back Salvin Ahmed and wide receiver Ethan Fernia to the practice squad. We all know Ethan Fernia and his history
Legend.
with the Colts, but Salvin Ahmed, he's a new one. And what's interesting about this one is he spent the last 4 seasons with the Miami Dolphins. So he got added to the practice squad this week. In his career, has 163 attempts for 593 yards and 5 touchdowns. That was a rotational back for the Miami Dolphins. But Drake, I think what he does provide is someone on the practice squad to kind of fit the role of that Devon Achane, that Raheem Morris, that try to simulate that in practice for this Colts defense, so that way they're better prepared for these speedy running backs on Sunday.
Yeah, and look, any advantage, any way you can help your linebackers, help your defensive tackles get ready for that 3-pronged attack, the better. So I like the point that you made there. With that's probably one of the biggest reasons they did add him, because I don't really expect him to stick around long after Taylor returns.
Yeah, exactly. I think he was also added as insurance for Trey Sermon if Sermon can't miss as well, but It's more to simulate what the Dolphins are going to bring on Sunday. And then again, guys, we said that he was going to be off the team again by the time we spoke to you tonight, and sure enough, Spencer Schrader was released from the practice squad along with linebacker Austin Ajike. But Spencer Schrader, it reminds me of if you guys don't know, if you haven't watched The Office, it reminds me of the Michael Scott scene where he's talking about a certain medical procedure and he goes snip snap snip snap snip snap. It's kind of like sign cut for Spencer Schrader. The poor dude just he can't stay on the practice squad for more than a day. But as long as those checks are clearing, I mean, Spencer's probably is like, hey, as long as I'm getting paid for all this grief, that's all I care about.
Yeah, and it really seems like they do like him at least enough to try to keep him when they can, just in case. So if there's ever a spot where they can look out there and say, hey, you know what, Schrader's still available. Don't be surprised if you see him re-signed again at some point to the freaking practice squad.
Listen, Schrader, don't put your house on the market. You likely don't have a house in Indianapolis because of all the cuts. Don't like cut your lease at the apartment that you're staying at, because my guess is on Monday, Spencer Schrader will be back with the Indianapolis Colts. But Drake, yeah, a big game this weekend. They're all big in the NFL, but the Colts really have to take advantage of this. You're playing a Dolphins team that is much less formidable than you thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season. You can't take this team lightly, though. If you do, you're probably looking at another situation like in Green Bay, where it's a game that you should have won easily and you got embarrassed. The Colts can't do that. The Colts have already been embarrassed enough on the field through 6 weeks. It's time to start putting together this solid team, taking care of business, winning the games that you're supposed to win, and start building momentum. So that way you are at the top of your game heading into the Week 8 matchup with the Houston Texans.
Yeah, and look, this is home field advantage that you've got. You're looking for a 3-1. You're looking to finish this opponent off, so you finish with a 3-1 home record, through 7 weeks. So this is a massive game for the Colts. A 3-4 record is a whole hell of a lot different than 4-3, man.
Exactly. So that's our show for tonight, everyone. Really appreciate you guys tuning in to talk Colts Dolphins with all of us. It was really fun. The chat was awesome tonight. Want to give a shout out to Paul Wilson, an NFL nerd, for the super chats, as well as everyone else that joined in to talk Colts football tonight with us. You're the reason we do this show. It makes it a blast. So as long as you're here, you better be following us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts_SI on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel, and make sure you hit that bell so you never miss an episode. And then wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure to subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. Drake, as always, I'm sure you got plenty of content out there on horseshoehuddle.com. I know you have plenty of content out there. Tell the people what they need to go check out before this weekend's game.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of updates on our channel and a bunch of pieces that have come out. But one that I'm really excited about is the 5 keys to victory that I'm going to be releasing tomorrow morning over the Dolphins. Some of those are going to be what we talked about here. Some of those are going to be a little bit outside of the box. But, man, the Colts really have to get a win here, have to get that 4th one.
Definitely go check that out. And you know what, shout out to Lindsey Mack coming in at the buzzer with one final super chat. Lindsey, thank you so much, buddy, for all of your support. One for luck, good to catch you live. Go Colts. Glad Lindsey was able to stay up across the pond with us, so really appreciate all of your support, Lindsey, as always. So definitely check out that piece by Drake, the 5 keys to victory for the Colts against the Dolphins. Myself got a piece out on who else. Anthony Richardson. He dove into his status for this upcoming game. But what was really interesting about this piece is he also detailed what he learned sitting back the past couple of weeks, watching Joe Flacco prepare to be the starter and watching how Joe Flacco performed in those games. Some really good insight from Anthony Richardson that he is going to be able to take and put into his own game that I think could set Anthony Richardson up for success the rest of the way. So check that out. And then tomorrow, guess who's going into the Ring of Honor? We already talked about it. Dallas Clark. I'm going to have a piece on Dallas Clark, what he meant to the Colts franchise in his time here, and really just to the game in general. So got to give props and got to honor number 44 this weekend. So make sure you check that out, as well as everything else on horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow Drake at DWallsterDrake. If I remember to get the banners down, you can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL. And we'll be back Monday night to break everything down for you from this Colts Dolphins matchup in week 7. And maybe we're talking about a Colts team that is finally over that 500 mark. So everyone, enjoy your weekend, enjoy the game on Sunday, and we'll see you right back here on Monday night. Take it easy.